The accidental observer, the magnetic field generator, hummed softly beneath Finn's fingers as he calibrated the delicate instrument. As the only human cartographer aboard the Australis, he'd grown accustomed to the curious glances from the Velsian crew. Their tall, slender frames and luminescent blue-tinged skin made them seem almost ethereal compared to his stockier build. "Your calculations appear incorrect," came a melodic voice behind him. Finn turned to find Nylaria watching him, her crystalline eyes reflecting the soft ambient lighting. The chief xenobiologist of the vessel stood with perfect posture. Her expression, the practiced neutrality all Velsians maintained. "They're different." "Not incorrect," Finn replied, trying not to stare at the intricate patterns that flowed across her skin when she moved. "Human methodology accounts for variance." Nylaria stepped closer, her scent reminiscent of rain-soaked minerals. "Fascinating. Your species embraces imprecision." As she leaned over to examine his work, her shoulder brushed his. Finn felt warmth creep up his neck and into his cheeks. The physiological reaction was involuntary but immediate. Nylaria's eyes widened slightly. "Your facial capillaries are dilating. Are you unwell?" "I'm fine," Finn muttered, turning back to his instruments. "Your epidermis has changed color, red." "Why?" "It's called blushing," he explained reluctantly. "It happens sometimes when humans feel uncomfortable." Her head tilted with scientific curiosity. "You blush so easily. Human. Do all your species react this way?" The question hung between them, and Finn realized the entire laboratory had fallen silent. Other Velsians had paused their work, watching the interaction with thinly veiled interest. "Most do, yes. It's involuntary." Nylaria's fingers moved to her data tablet. "Your biological responses are unfiltered by conscious control?" "Most intriguing." Over the following days, Finn noticed Nylaria observing him during his shifts. Her gaze followed his movements, noting his reactions to various stimuli. When their eyes met across the research bay, she didn't look away as the others did. During the third cycle, Captain Drovic summoned Finn to the command center. "Your mapping of the Carrion Nebula has been adequate," the captain stated, his tone measured. "However, Officer Nylaria has requested your assistance with a biological survey." "I'm not a biologist," Finn replied. "No," Drovic agreed. "But apparently you possess certain physiological traits of interest. Report to Laboratory 6 at next rotation." As Finn left, he caught Nylaria watching him from across the corridor. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a flicker of something across her features. Microscopic breach in the emotional restraint all Velsians prided themselves on. "Tomorrow, then," she said simply. Finn nodded, feeling the telltale warmth rising again. This time, Nylaria's lips curved almost imperceptibly. "Fascinating," she whispered. Curious Explorations Laboratory 6 was smaller than the main research bay, offering an intimacy that immediately made Finn's collar feel tight. Nylaria stood beside a console, displaying what appeared to be his medical scans. "You've been monitoring me?" he asked, surprised. "Passive observation only," she replied. "Your species exhibits emotional transparency that Velsians eliminated generations ago. Your physiological responses to stimuli are remarkable. You make me sound like a lab specimen." Faint ripple of blue light crossed her skin, the Velsian equivalent of surprise. "That was not my intention. My interest is scientific, but also personal." Before Finn could respond, the ship lurched violently. Warning signals flashed as the gravity generators fluctuated. Finn stumbled forward, instinctively reaching out to steady himself. His hands found Nylaria's shoulders. Their faces suddenly inches apart. The alarm blared overhead, but for a moment neither moved. Finn felt his heart rate accelerate, knew his cheeks were flushing again. Nylaria's eyes widened, the patterns on her skin pulsing rapidly. "Engineering to all personnel," crackled the intercom. "Coolant system failure in Sector 4. They separated quickly. "We should assist," Nylaria said, her voice slightly higher than normal. They raced through corridors filled with rushing crew members. When they reached engineering, chaos greeted them. A damaged coolant valve was venting toxic gas into the chamber, Emergency protocols failed, shouted Engineer Trevion. We need manual override. Finn assessed the situation. I can reach the bypass valve, but the toxicity levels... Velsians can withstand brief exposure, Nyleria stated. I will accompany you. They entered the chamber together, moving swiftly through the billowing vapor. Finn's eyes watered as he located the override panel. Nyleria stayed close, her body shielding his partially from the worst of the gas as they worked. Her hand occasionally brushed his, each contact sending an unexpected jolt through his system. The valve finally sealed with a resonant clang. Later in the medical bay, Nyleria insisted on treating the mild chemical burns on Finn's forearms personally. Your reaction was illogical, she noted, applying the healing compound. You risked significant harm. Humans often act on instinct in emergencies, he explained. Her fingers lingered on his skin. Your temperature elevated when I touched you. Another involuntary response? Finn hesitated. Not entirely. Nyleria's patterns shifted subtly. I've been experiencing unusual sensations myself. When you approached in the laboratory, my cardiovascular rhythm accelerated by 14%. There is no physiological explanation for this anomaly. There might be, Finn said softly, but it's not strictly scientific. A chime interrupted them. Captain Drovik appeared in the doorway, his expression severe, even by Velsian standards. Your actions in engineering were commendable, he acknowledged. However, this growing ... interaction requires discussion. Captain? Nyleria straightened. The Council has concerns about human emotional contagion. Your readings show unusual patterns, Nyleria. Report to Central Command for evaluation. After he departed, Finn noticed Nyleria's hand trembling slightly, a shocking display from a species renowned for perfect control. What aren't you telling me? Finn asked quietly. Perhaps, she whispered, your humanity is affecting more than just my curiosity. Forbidden Resurge Neria returned from her evaluation with a composed expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. She found Finn in the observatory, mapping stellar anomalies. The Council believes human emotional patterns may compromise Velsian neural discipline, she stated without preamble. They've ordered minimal contact between us. Finn felt an unexpected hollowness in his chest. And what do you believe? Her gaze met his directly. I believe something unprecedented is occurring. Before meeting you, my existence was ordered, predictable. Now I find myself ... anticipating our interactions. Their conversation was interrupted by a subtle vibration through the deck plates, too slight for alarm, but unusual enough to notice. That's the third time today, Finn commented. Someone's accessing the propulsion controls without proper calibration. Nyleria's brow furrowed. Such errors are highly improbable among Velsian engineers, lest they're not errors. They exchanged a look of mutual understanding. Without discussing their plan, they began reviewing ship systems, careful to maintain professional distance when others were present. Through subtle information exchanges and seemingly casual meetings, a disturbing pattern emerged. The navigation algorithms have been modified, Nyleria whispered during a brief encounter in the hydroponic garden. Our trajectory has shifted 0.03 degrees. Toward the Marilon expanse, Finn confirmed. Restricted space. Later that cycle, as they passed in a corridor, Finn pressed a data chip into her palm. Security recordings show Commander Pelvin accessing engineering systems during rest periods. That evening, Finn found Nyleria waiting in his quarters. Her presence technically a violation of the Council's directive. Pelvin reports directly to the Science Directorate, she said without greeting. They've always considered this research mission a waste of resources. They want the Astralis for something else, Finn concluded. Nyleria moved closer, her voice dropping. If we report our suspicions without conclusive evidence, we'll be dismissed. Possibly worse. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air between them charged with unspoken tension. Finn was acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle luminescence of her skin in the dim lighting. We need to access the secure server, he suggested, fighting distraction. It requires dual authentication. Different species. A perfect excuse for collaboration. They worked through the night, shoulders touching, occasionally catching each other's gaze. When Nilaria's patterns brightened at his proximity, Finn no longer attempted to hide his physiological responses. "These connections between us," she said softly as dawn approached. "They were never anticipated in first contact protocols," Finn smiled. "Human history is full of unanticipated connections." Their findings confirmed their fears. A covert mission to deliver the Australis to Marilon, where radical Velsian purists planned to use its advanced technology for military purposes as they compiled their evidence. The door suddenly sealed shut. Emergency lighting bathed the room in crimson. On the display screen, Commander Pelvin's face appeared. "Your collaborative research has been most revealing," he stated coldly. "Unfortunately, it cannot continue." Toxic gas began seeping through the ventilation system. As the air thickened, Nilaria turned to Finn, her expression more open than he'd ever seen. "If these are our final moments," she said, "I would experience something else humans do readily." Her lips met his as the room filled with fog. Crisis and revelation, they awoke in a sealed maintenance pod, emergency systems humming around them. Finn gasped, his lungs burning. Beside him, Nilaria regained consciousness more slowly, her normally luminescent skin dulled to a muted glow. "How are we alive?" he croaked. "Emergency protocols," she whispered. "Automated response to toxins, but they'll realize soon." Finn checked the systems. "We're locked down, communications disabled. They think we're dead. Then we have temporary advantage." Nilaria straightened with effort. "The ship is still on course for Morellon. We must act, using maintenance tunnels." They navigated unseen through the vessel. Their evidence was lost, but they carried something more dangerous firsthand. Knowledge of the conspiracy. They reached the secondary control room undetected. Nilaria's access code still functioned, allowing them into the system. "We can't regain control," Finn realized, "but we can send an emergency beacon." As they worked, Finn noticed Nilaria's movements becoming more fluid, less rigidly controlled. When their fingers intertwined briefly over the console, her patterns flared brilliantly. "Your influence has changed me," she admitted quietly. "Velsian discipline teaches that emotion leads to chaos, yet I find clarity in these new sensations." Finn smiled. "Humans believe emotion can be a strength, not just a vulnerability." The beacon was prepared, encoded with their evidence. But before they could transmit, alarms blared. Commander Pelvin's voice echoed through the ship. "Attention crew. Terrorists have sabotaged critical systems. Security teams to all sectors." "They know," Nilaria whispered. The door burst open. Armed security officers entered, Pelvin behind them. "How disappointing," he said. "Your contamination by human emotionality is worse than we feared." "Nilaria, your betrayal of our mission is the true contamination," she replied. Standing protectively near Finn, Pelvin signaled his officers. "Take them to holding. After delivery to Marilon, they'll be properly processed." As they were separated, Finn caught Nilaria's gaze. Something passed between them, a silent promise, an understanding deeper than words. In isolation, Finn worked furiously, using his cartographer's knowledge of the ship's systems to bypass the cell's security. When he finally escaped, the Australis was shuddering, its engine straining as it approached Marilon space. He found Nilaria, already free, confronting Pelvin on the bridge. The commander had a weapon trained on her as Finn entered. "Your emotional corruption is complete," Pelvin was saying. "You've abandoned centuries of evolutionary discipline for primitive human connection." "I've discovered something our ancestors sacrificed needlessly," Nilaria responded, her patterns pulsing defiantly. "Connection isn't weakness, it's another form of strength." When Pelvin turned slightly at Finn's entrance, Nilaria moved with unexpected speed, striking the commander's arm. Finn lunged forward. Together, they subdued him. With the beacon finally transmitted and loyal crew members regaining control, they stood side by side, watching as Velsian security vessels responded to their call. "What happens now?" Finn asked, suddenly aware that their crisis-forged bond faced new uncertainties. Nilaria's hand found his. her touch sending cascades of light across her skin. "Now we challenge assumptions," she said simply. "On both sides." New understanding 3 cycles later, the Astralis orbited Velsia Prime, its mission recalibrated after the conspiracy's exposure. The Science Directorate had been purged of radical elements, and a new dialogue about human-Velsian cooperation had begun. Finn stood before the Velsian High Council, uncomfortably aware of the formal attire that constrained his movements. Beside him, Nealaria waited with outward calm. Though he could detect subtle fluctuations in her luminescence that others might miss, the events aboard the Astralis raised profound questions, intoned Elder Kivash. "For generations we have suppressed emotional response as evolutionary regression. Yet your reports suggest otherwise." "With respect," Finn replied, "humans have found balance between emotion and reason. They complement rather than oppose each other." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Another elder leaned forward. "In you, Nealaria, you were among our most disciplined scientists. Now your patterns display irregularities consistent with emotional expression." Nealaria straightened. "I've discovered that our understanding of emotional response was incomplete. What we dismissed as primitive may instead represent complex adaptive functionality." The council deliberated while Finn and Nealaria were escorted to a waiting area overlooking the capital city. Crystal spires reflected the planet's 3 moons, casting prismatic light across the landscape. "They fear change," Finn observed. "As do all sentient beings," Nealaria replied, her hand finding his in a gesture now familiar. "But fear can be overcome with understanding." When they were recalled, the council had reached a decision. A research initiative would be established, exploring the potential benefits of controlled emotional expression. Nealaria would lead the scientific team. Finn would serve as human liaison. Later, in the privacy of the botanical gardens, they walked among exotic flora from a dozen worlds. Their official duties complete, they could finally address what had grown between them. "The Council believes our connection is merely scientific curiosity," Nealaria said, her patterns shifting to the deeper blue that Finn now recognized as amusement. "And what do you believe?" he asked, stopping beneath a canopy of luminescent leaves. "I believe we have discovered something neither of our species fully anticipated." Her fingers traced the contours of his face, triggering the blush that had first captured her attention. "This reaction still fascinates me." Finn smiled, drawing her closer. "Some human responses are worth studying in depth." Their lips met, as they had during that moment of crisis. But this time, without desperation, a deliberate exploration of connection. Nealaria's patterns cascaded in brilliant waves, her disciplined reserve giving way to something more primal and honest. When they finally separated, her eyes held a new light. "The Council fears emotional contagion will undermine Velsian society." "Perhaps they're right, or perhaps it will transform it," Finn suggested. "Not to become human, but to rediscover something uniquely Velsian that was lost." She considered this. A synthesis rather than a replacement. Under the alien stars, they stood at the threshold of something unprecedented, not just personal connection, but a bridge between fundamentally different approaches to consciousness. "You blush so easily," human Nealaria whispered, echoing her first observation. "And now I understand why." Finn touched his forehead to hers. "Because some reactions can't be contained and shouldn't be." Together they watched the rising moons, representatives of worlds finding new ways to understand each other, one reaction at a time.